Hey friends, we just got done watching the RX 6000 announcement from AMD, and boy howdy did they show up, and they show up hard. Besides the fact that they decided to cut the presentation together rather jarredly and make it so that Lisa Su wasn't breathing in between the cuts, besides that, it was great. So let's talk about the new RX 6800, 6800 XT, and 6900 XT, because those are your new AMD GPUs, with them looking to be quite dang competitive with the RTX 30 series. And in fact, I would be so bold as to say don't buy the RTX 30 series until we have reviews come out about these cards, because everything's either looking super promising in AMD's favor, or at least so close that you actually won't be able to make a proper judgment until we have more detailed benchmarks from third-party reviewers. So let's go ahead and take a look at what AMD did announce. The reason you should be excited about these cards is because of these AMD slides. However, just put it with a grain of salt, obviously, is that these are made by AMD and they have caveats at the bottom, such as rage mode and smart access memory, which I'll get into what those are in just a second. But just know that these benchmarks won't apply in everybody's instance. But this is the 6900 XT, which, as you can see, is being compared to the RTX 3090, and it's either going toe-to-toe, such as in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, or it's beating the snot out of it, such as in Forza Horizon 4. Then we have the 6800 XT, and it's a very similar, actually not as bad, toe-to-toe benchmark against the 3080. The 6800 XT goes more even with the 3080 and slightly beats it and slightly loses some instances. It actually looks like the 6900 XT smashes the 3090 more than the 6800 XT smashes the 3080, and then the 6800 does to the 2080 Ti what the 6900 XT does to the 3090, which is absolutely decimated. And in case you aren't familiar, the RTX 3070, which AMD couldn't compare this to because it actually doesn't even physically launch until tomorrow, is about a 2080 Ti in performance. So the 6800 looks like it's going up right up against the 3070 with that regards. So now let's go ahead and talk about release date and pricing, because that's what I'm sure a lot of you guys are curious about. If it's beating them, it better be doing it at a good price. Otherwise, the argument is just moot. If the 6900 XT costs $3,000, who cares if it beats the 3090? Well, thankfully, the 6800 XT are going to be launching on November 18th with it, which is exactly 3 weeks from now, for the price of $579 in the case of the 6800 and $649 in the case of the 6800 XT, which means the XT version is coming in at $50 cheaper than the 3080, and the 6800 is coming in at $80 more than the 3070, which is why benchmarks from third-party reviewers is so key in this instance, simply because we don't know if those benchmarks actually translate to a giant real-world performance, or if things such as the smart access memory might make a bigger deal than AMD is making it out to be. It's hard to say. Then the 6900 XT is coming out December 8th for $999, which is $500 cheaper than the RTX 3090, and looks like it wipes the floor with it. But again, as I mentioned in those benchmarks, it does say rage mode and smart access memory. So let's go ahead and talk about what that is. Smart access memory is an exclusive feature for Ryzen 5000 series processors with B550 and X570 motherboards. It's going to allow Ryzen processors to access the VRAM that is on these GPUs and use it to give better gaming performance. And AMD said it would only account for about a 6% uplift, but we're not exactly sure. So if you're on Intel, or if you're on a Ryzen 3000 series chip, you're actually likely to see worse performance than what is being presented in these benchmarks right here, which is a key indication to maybe think about AMD creating an environment where their GPUs perform better on their latest platform, but not necessarily on the platform that everybody has right now. So you're not going to get the full unlocked version of these cards unless you plan to upgrade to Ryzen 5000. Does that bother you? I want to hear from you down below in the comments. But then also on top of that, we got rage mode, which is essentially overclocking. It's one-click overclocking. They're calling it rage mode. It's just they're overclocking the card, which again makes it so that these benchmarks are a little different. Was the RTX 3090 overclocked? How overclocked is the 6900 XT? We don't have those answers, so finding out what the exact measurement point is going to be key to determining things such as whether or not the $80 is worth it for the 6800 versus the RTX 3070. AMD also came out with a bunch of other technologies that they didn't spend too much time on, such as the denoiser that they're going to have for ray tracing, as well as super resolution. They didn't go into a whole lot about their hardware-based ray trace acceleration, or whether or not they're going to have a hardware accelerated version of deep learning super sampling, if indeed super resolution is a competitor to that. So we're just going to have to wait on AMD to give more details for us to get the full picture of what's going on here with RDNA 2. Noticeably absent from the presentation was, number one, any mention of their driver issues that they've been having, or whether or not they're going to be improving the drivers going forward. So if that was still a key consideration before the announcement today, they didn't do much to alleviate any fears with that regard. Number two, there was no mention of any stock issues that are going on. They kind of took a dig at NVIDIA for the fact that their board power was 20 watts more than their cards for the exact same performance. So AMD's technically the more efficient process, but no mention of inventory or stock or anything of that sort. And then number three, probably the biggest one for me, which probably doesn't matter to a whole lot of you, is they didn't mention the fact that they lied. Yeah, AMD lied because they told us that Big Navi would be out before the consoles. Big Navi was going to be the first RDNA 2 product to market, but the Xbox Series X coming out November 10th, the PS5 coming out November 12th, and the cards coming out November 18th. What happened to the release date, AMD? Why are you cyberpunking us? So this is the second big announcement from AMD this month. Ryzen 5000 coming out on November 5th, which is in just about a week. And then a few weeks later, you should be able to pick up the RX 6000 series of graphics cards. Based on the benchmarks that AMD is putting out, this is an insanely exciting generation of GPUs. This kind of creates a new environment where we are having AMD and NVIDIA go toe-to-toe at the high end once again. But just as I've mentioned so many times, wait for third-party benchmarks before you make a decision. I think we all can be excited right now, but I would say even hold off on buying those RTX 3070s, 3080s, and 3090s right now until we have AMD's benchmarks, because you might be filled with some quick buyer's remorse when we do get some more information out on these cards. But thankfully, NVIDIA's made it easy so that that's not really much of a problem for you to wait for those cards simply because they're not in stock. And maybe they might not even be in stock by November 18th, which means that if the RX 6000 series is better and is in stock, you might be able to sell your RTX 30 series as a premium to people who actually want those cards and scalp them slightly and get the better card. Maybe, possibly. Who knows if that's actually going to play out that way. But NVIDIA kind of beating themselves with this. I think it was an intriguing move by NVIDIA to drop the RTX 3070 reviews yesterday and have them go on sale tomorrow. But if they would have been on sale and people would have already had them in their hands, I think we'd be having less of a discussion about the 6800. But also, NVIDIA not selling the 30 series to everybody is a huge loss for them because of how many people likely are going to be holding off with now what we know about AMD's RX 6000. It has created an environment where there's just uncertainty in the air as to what people are going to be going for. So I'm going to leave a poll in the top right hand corner. I actually want to know, can you even still leave polls? If I can, there's a poll in the top right hand corner. Are you going with the RTX 30 series? Or are you going with the RX 6000 series? I really want to know what you guys are breaking it down to. But if everybody was able to get a 3080, everybody who wanted one, there would be less discussion about whether or not they have to even wait for the 6800 XT. So NVIDIA kind of screwed themselves over by not shipping out these cards, which is why I don't take a whole lot of precedence to people who are saying, NVIDIA is intentionally holding back stock. They wouldn't be doing that. That's not how businesses work. They want to make as much revenue as possible. They're making $0 by not selling the cards. They're not going to somehow magically make more at a fixed price because they didn't get the stock out to people at launch and instead waited for it. I don't see that happening. I think this is creating an environment where people are going to be waiting for new benchmarks from AMD, and it just, this sucks for NVIDIA. Man, should have thought about that before we switched to Samsung, huh? And before I belabor this anymore, we're going to switch on out of this recap of what went down at the AMD RX 6000 series announcement. Let me know what you think of these cards down below in the comments. I'm keen to hear from you, but I'm going to leave you with one last thing. As my pal over at Zach's Tech Turf says, wait for actual benchmarks. Cheers.